Hey everybody, this is Mr. Mobbin coming back at you again. This is part 2 of AP Gov's topic 2.9, focusing in on the legitimacy of the judicial branch. Last time we were talking about the impact of the common law tradition and the impact of Chief Justice John Marshall. What we're going to do this time is we're going to be taking a look at the current U.S. Supreme Court, those 9 justices that currently have the responsibility for interpreting the U.S. Constitution. So this is an actual current photo of the U.S. Supreme Court, and we're going to get to know all 9 of these justices a little bit better, a little bit about their background, a little bit about their beliefs, to kind of put some meat on the bones, so to speak, in terms of getting to know who these people are, as opposed to just names out in the ether, so to speak. So with that being said, first off, fun fact, when you take a look at an actual photograph of the U.S. Supreme Court, just like everything else seemingly with the court, it is based on tradition. The Chief Justice always sits in the front center, not a surprise. And then extending out right to left, you see the seniority of the justices from the front to the back. So the most senior associate justice is over here, Justice Thomas. And the least senior member of the court is Justice Amy Coney Barrett, over here where my cursor is. So anyhow, that being said, let's get to know these justices. And we're going to start off right here with Chief Justice John Roberts. Now, John Roberts has not been on the court the longest of any of these justices. That's actually Justice Thomas. But Justice Roberts is the Chief Justice, so he is considered the most significant of these justices. Now, Chief Justice Roberts was appointed back in 2005 by President George W. Bush. Not a surprise, coming from a Republican president, that Roberts is a conservative. Now, when Roberts first took over the court, it was a much more balanced court ideologically between the liberal wing and the conservative wing. And Roberts tended to be a little bit more of a solid conservative vote on that court. And you saw a number of 5-4 rulings, back 10, 15 years ago that kind of showed the ideological lean of the court. But as we'll talk a little bit more later on here, the court has become more conservative over the last 10 years or so, especially in the last 5 years. And what Roberts has done is try to, once again, kind of taking a page from Chief Justice John Marshall, trying to create more of this unified voice of the court. Even though we are a nation that is woefully divided ideologically, massively divided in terms of party affiliation, we see that shown clearly in the makeup and actions of Congress. We see that in terms of voter support and turnout for electing the President of the United States. Chief Justice Roberts is still trying to give a sense that the court is above partisanship, that it is its own independent voice made up of independent people, which is kind of interesting because, Roberts, even though he is a conservative, and I would say, 7 times out of 8, you could pretty much rely on him, kind of leading the conservative wing and making sure that there's a more conservative interpretation of the law and the Constitution from the court. That's not to say that he's just kind of a gimme member of the conservative wing. Roberts has been willing to kind of, look to the other side. For example, Roberts has been the deciding vote on, for example, the constitutionality of Obamacare. Obamacare is constitutional because of Chief Justice Roberts' deciding vote. The constitutionality of the DACA program, which is an executive order coming from the Obama White House, which creates, kind of a special status for the children of those that have come over as illegal immigrants. That was Chief Justice Roberts' deciding vote. So on occasion, Roberts is going to side with the liberals. It's going to surprise the conservatives. In fact, probably more than surprise the conservatives. It's going to irk a lot of conservatives. But Roberts, I think, likes to send the message as the Chief Justice that he is not this slam dunk ideologue, that you can just always guarantee how he's going to rule no matter what, that he looks more at the merit of the case than just from a simple liberal or conservative paradigm. Now, that being said, many more of the justices, the remaining justices, these are folks that we call associate justices, they tend to be much more ideologically driven. And perhaps the one that's probably the most ideologically driven is the most senior member of the associate justices, the longest current serving member of the court, and that is Clarence Thomas. This is Clarence Thomas over here to the right of Chief Justice Roberts. Now, Clarence Thomas is going to be a very, very, very solid conservative. And part of it is going to be his Catholic religious affiliation, although clearly being Catholic does not guarantee how someone is going to be ideologically leaning. When we talk about Sonia Sotomayor over here to the right, she is also a Catholic, but she is, arguably our most liberal justice on the court. Justice Thomas is very conservative on a lot of social issues, most importantly, abortion. He is a small government conservative. He is only the second African American to ever serve on the U.S. Supreme Court, appointed by the elder Bush, George H.W. Bush, back in 1991. He actually was appointed to replace the only other African American member of the court, Thurgood Marshall, who was more of a liberal. Justice Thomas also has a reputation, maybe not the greatest reputation, for being the least active judge from the perspective of asking questions during oral arguments. During oral arguments, when each lawyer presents their case to the court, the justices have the ability to interrupt at any time and ask questions. Some justices obviously ask more questions than others, but in the case of Justice Thomas, he is absolutely associated with not asking questions. There was a 10-year stretch where Justice Thomas did not ask a single question during any oral arguments of any case that the court heard. I mean, that is way beyond anything else we had ever seen before. And Thomas would pretty much, tell his critics that, he can learn just as much, if not more, from listening than from asking questions. Thomas was also associated with a lot of hubbub surrounding his confirmation hearings. Justice Thomas, when he was appointed by George H.W. Bush, was facing allegations of sexual harassment back when he was a lower court justice. It led to a very partisan, very nasty confirmation set of hearings, but Thomas does barely get through. And now today, he is the longest serving member of the court. The next most senior member is Stephen Breyer, which is to the left of Chief Justice Roberts over here. Justice Breyer is the longest serving liberal member of the court, going back to being appointed by President Clinton. Breyer's, pretty solid liberal. He is also our oldest member of the court right now. So there has been some pressure by folks on the left to try to get him to retire right now, given the fact that there's a Democrat in the White House and a Democrat-controlled Senate. But Breyer has pretty much sent the message that he is not interested in leaving before he is good and ready. Now, the other thing that's kind of interesting about Breyer is that when Breyer was appointed a justice, he was, the newbie rookie justice, which, every justice is for a time. Now, a lot of the court's actions are dictated by tradition. Once again, that's kind of a given. Now, one of the traditions that the newbie rookie justice has is to basically be responsible for literally, and I would say more symbolically, but technically guarding the door to the conference room for the justices when they actually sit down and talk behind closed doors about the constitutional arguments of the cases that they're considering. He held that position for 11 years. He was the rookie noob, justice for a long, long time. Now he's the second, most tenured member of the court. But I always kind of find that interesting. It's kind of like imagine being a freshman in high school for 11 years, so to speak. So Breyer kind of had to survive that. Now we get into the other pick by President George W. Bush, and that is over here, Samuel Alito. Samuel Alito, very staunch conservative. I would say he's just about as nearly as conservative as Justice Thomas. Very conservative on social issues. Another fellow Catholic. He is, very, very staunch conservative. After that, we start to get into the picks made by President Obama. You've got Sonia Sotomayor over here to the far right. She is our first ever Latina member of the court, probably the most liberal member of the court right now. She is probably the most outspoken member of the court right now, the one that's most willing to criticize the actions of the court, for sure. So Sotomayor, pretty significant there. Then we get into some others. You got Elena Kagan. That is, this is her right there. The other pick by President Obama. Kagan is one of two Jewish members of the court. Kagan and Breyer are both Jewish. Speaking of the religious affiliation of the members of the court is actually very disproportionately Catholic. 6 of the 9 justices are Catholic. Catholics make up, though, in the United States about 35-40% of the population. So it's a heavily Catholic-dominated court. And, given some of the prevailing views of Catholics on various social and economic issues, that can explain some of the lean of the court. But once again, you've got, Sotomayor, who was also a Catholic and not a conservative on a whole bunch of social issues. Then we rounded out by taking a look at the picks by President Trump. And Trump got 3 picks, which is the most picks by a president going back to Ronald Reagan. First one being Neil Gorsuch. Now, Gorsuch, as we take a look over here, the only Protestant member of the court. And Gorsuch is I would say, more of a moderate to conservative member of the court, kind of close to Roberts, I would say. The thing about Gorsuch that is probably, most resonant in his background in terms of how he got to the court is that he was the pick by Trump following the vacancy made by the death of Antonin Scalia. We know that President Obama had picked Merrick Garland to fill that position, but then Mitch McConnell in the Senate refused to hold confirmation hearings pending the upcoming presidential election. Trump wins the election, so instead of a Democrat president picking to fill the space, it's a Republican president. So that's kind of how Gorsuch gets there. So kind of interesting story of how he ends up there. The next justice is Brett Kavanaugh over here to the left. Trump's second pick, another pretty solid conservative. Maybe not as conservative as Thomas and Alito, but pretty solid. Some of you may remember his confirmation hearings, which were just as contentious, maybe even more so than the hearings associated with Justice Thomas a generation earlier. Not only was Kavanaugh accused of sexual harassment, he was accused of sexual assault. Very, very nasty confirmation hearing, extremely partisan, but Kavanaugh barely gets through. And then lastly, to fill the space left by Justice Ginsburg, we also have Justice Amy Coney Barrett over here, being only the only the fifth woman ever to serve on the Supreme Court. Very solid conservative, probably the most affected, I would say, by her Catholic beliefs. Her faith really does drive kind of how she views things for sure. But she's still very early on in her term in office. And she also kind of came in under a cloud because the same arguments used to not give Garland a chance to be confirmed was not applied when the shoe was on the other foot for Coney Barrett. So a little bit of controversy there. But bottom line, that's our current court. Note that this current court is the most conservative 6-3 margin that we've seen since the 1930s. So very conservative court now and moving forward. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.